Well, good afternoon. Welcome to our sermon online at 6. It's really good to be with you. If we've not met before, my name is Peter. I'm the curate, one of the ministers at St. Francis Church. It's great to be able to share this sermon with you very shortly. We've already had our 9 o'clock service, 10:45 and 4 p.m. Service as well. And in a moment, I'm going to share a sermon from Giles. We love Giles. He's our church warden, and he preached really great message for us from Matthew 2 this morning. But just before I dive into that, just a few things to share with you. As you may know, we have a vision to be a light on the hill for our estate. That's what we're about. And we work that vision out in 3 ways. We talk about worshipping God, growing community, and serving our estate. We've also got a few things coming up. So just to mention very briefly, on the 24th of January, we have a ceilidh, which is like a Scottish dance. I'd love to invite you to be part of that. 7 p.m. I think, 7 till 9 on the 24th. Of January. There'll be details on our social media if you want to find out more and book for that. And also we have Kingdom Come, our monthly prayer and worship event, coming up on the 18th of January, 7:30 at church. We'd love to see you there, and we'll be joining with others from across the Webs network to pray for our city and to worship together. And I'm going to read for us from the Bible. So this is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. So in the New Testament, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, it says this. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. This happened while Herod was king of Judea. After Jesus' birth, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the child who has been born king of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose, and we have come to worship him." When King Herod heard about it, he was very upset. Everyone in Jerusalem was troubled too. So Herod called together all the chief priests of the people. He also called the teachers of the law. He asked them where the Messiah was going to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied. "This is what the prophet has written." He said, "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are certainly not least among those of the towns of Judah. A ruler will come out of you. He will rule my people Israel like a shepherd." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men. He found out from them exactly when the star had appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem. He said, "Go, search carefully for this child, and as soon as you find him, report it to me. Then I can go and worship him too." After the wise men had listened to the king, they went on their way. A star had seen when it rose. It went ahead of them. It finally stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. The wise men went to the house, and they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures, and they gave him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But God warned them in a dream not to go back to Herod, so they returned to their country on a different road. So I'll hand over to Giles now.
We 3 kings of Orient are, one in a taxi, one in a car, one on a scooter, tooting his hooter, following yonder star. And of course they brought the gifts of gold, Frankenstein, and myrrh. Well, for some of us, to my shame including me, that might be about the schoolboy level of intellectual engagement with this story that we've had up until now. You might even have hit lucky with one of the school nativities and played the part of a wise man, because you get the fancy stuff from the dressing up box. None of the old tea towel and dressing gown look for you. I'm so glad God has got a sense of humour. And I trust that you've had a great time over Christmas and had some really good laughs with your family and friends, as we have. But isn't it all a bit odd, this story? These 3 mysterious wise men. We say 3, but Matthew doesn't actually say 3. There could have been 33, but you'd have a job fitting them all on the stage of a nativity play. Nativity plays, Christmas cards, they make them so familiar, and yet they're so unfamiliar. They come from far away, somewhere in the east, from a different culture. They're not Jews, and weirder still, they're into astrology, which the Bible describes as something that God hates. So, why are they such an integral part of the Christmas story? Well, let's try and dig into this story a bit. Just imagine you're on your camel. It's a bright, starlit night, and you set out with your friends on a journey. Now, this isn't just a regular trip to, say, visit your relatives. This would probably be a round trip of about 2,000 miles. So it's going to be more of an expedition. And you might justifiably start thinking, as you clop along at about 4 miles an hour, what on earth am I doing? Well, you'll certainly have had a compelling reason to even start packing your bags. I said it was a bright, starlit night. You and your friends have become very skilled at observing the stars without any light pollution to get in the way. And before Google Maps, you're very familiar with the patterns and movements of the stars. You can read them like a book. And something so unusual has appeared, unlike anything you've seen or heard before, that it sent you back to the library to look through all the records, all the history, to try and make sense of this new star that's appeared. Today, there have been many theories about what this star might have been. Maybe it was a comet, maybe it was two stars coming together. No one really knows. But here's the thing. You discover that about 500 years ago, the people of Judah were living in your part of the world as exiles in Babylon. And the king who conquered Babylon, a man named Cyrus, did something unheard of. He gave permission for the people of Judah, the Jews, to go back to their own land, to rebuild their holy city, and to rebuild their temple. You might remember the eyewitness accounts that we read in the autumn as we looked through the book of Ezra. Back to the wise men. No one ever did that with a conquered people. And it gave rise to an understanding in your culture that the God of the Jews must be a bit special. They might even have known about Isaiah, the prophet, the Jewish prophet, who 120 years before the event prophesied about the man named Cyrus who would do these things. So actually, you might have been quite excited sitting there on your camel. This God, who had quite a reputation, seemed to be up to something again. And you and your friends were on your way to find out what. The stars were speaking. Just like God had said way back in creation in Genesis 1:14, the stars were to be for signs and seasons. They speak of God's order in the universe, and we can learn from them. The bit God hates is people looking to the stars for fortune-telling and direction in life, rather than to the creator of the stars, God himself. So eventually, the wise men arrive in Jerusalem at Herod's palace. Why not at the manger in Bethlehem? Well, the palace is where you might expect to find a king, so it's pretty reasonable that this is the place they go and look first. But hang on, who said anything about a king? Somewhere over that long journey, God must have given the wise men revelation that the star was an indication that the king of the Jews had been born. They really were arriving for something special. Now, we call them wise men, but their wisdom was more in the sense of knowing, understanding, making sense within the limits of their knowledge of what was going on, rather than being philosophers who just sit and think, as far as I'm aware. But this is in stark contrast to the Jewish chief priests and scribes, who Herod now calls on to tell him about this new king of the Jews. They have access to the whole of the Old Testament, detailing God's plans and purposes worked out through their own history. And in answering King Herod, they even quote one of the prophecies pointing to the Messiah. It's from Bethlehem that the ruler will come to shepherd God's people, Israel. And yet they seem blind and deaf to their own revelation from God. While the real wise men joyfully head off to Bethlehem, the Jews, who should have known so much better, are not interested, and they stay right where they are. This is actually tragic, and it's probably the main reason why Matthew has included the story of the wise men in his gospel. The whole of the Old Testament has been preparing God's chosen people, the Jews, for their Messiah, the one who would finally restore their relationship with Father God. And yet when the time comes, they reject him. Instead, It's a group of people from far away in the east who want to know him. They've got no history of walking with God, no experience of God's miraculous provision for them, no stories of God's incredible power, rescuing them from their enemies. They've just got some vague legends to go on and a star. Our Old Testament reading from Isaiah 60 prophesied these events. The wise men were the first Gentile believers coming to the brightness of his dawning. And they were the ones who knelt before Jesus and worshipped him. The response of the Jewish leaders was tragic, but the glorious significance of the wise men was that now God was extending his plan of salvation way beyond his chosen people to include the whole world. And today, we, also non-Jews, follow in the footsteps of those first wise men in coming to Jesus for ourselves. And how wise are we? When I spoke at the Nativity service before Christmas, I suggested that after the wise men came the even wiser women, bringing gifts of chocolate, nappies, and dinners for a week. And if you're a mother well experienced in childbirth, you might actually resonate with that and think, well, that actually is much more appropriate in terms of the gifts to bring to a young mum. You see, wisdom needs applying to a situation. I mean, Einstein might have been a brilliant scientist, but would you want him managing Derby County? If you were a Forest fan, you might say, yes, have him. The point is, he doesn't have any relevant knowledge. So how do we get wisdom for our own lives? Where are we going to find it? Are we going to do a bit of doom scrolling? I'm a bit guilty of that as well, I'm afraid, on the internet. And listen to any number of things which might catch our attention. Or are we going to listen to people who seem to have done pretty well in life? Maybe celebrities who seem to have a nice lifestyle. The Bible tells us that the beginning of wisdom is actually the fear of God. That's Proverbs 1:7. And fear here means proper respect. It's not a scaredy cat type fear. It means that we recognize that God has all the relevant knowledge and understanding about how best to live our lives. And it shouldn't surprise us because he did make us in the first place, after all. So it means that we bring all our knowledge, all our best efforts at working things out, and we submit them to him. The fear of God is the most basic ingredient in wisdom. It's no use just knowing stuff about God. We need to know him and submit to him. These Jewish leaders had the Old Testament, but we've got the whole Bible to refer to. Now, a map is really useful for finding your way on a journey, but you've got to learn how to read it before it's going to be any use to you. What do the symbols mean? How do you figure out which direction you're going? What do the numbers mean? The wise men would probably have read the stars like we read a map. But it's the same with the Bible. We've got to know where we are in the big story. Is this poetry or instruction which applies to me today? What do I learn about God's character and his personality from what I'm reading? What might he be trying to say to me right now, today? We need to make time to get into it so that we can bring our growing knowledge and understanding and submit that to God and become skilled at hearing his voice, tuned into his wisdom, so that we don't get presumptuous like those Jewish teachers and perhaps miss what's right under our noses. Now we might say, yeah, well, I'm not that clever with this sort of stuff. But that doesn't matter. Jesus said, coming to me like children is just fine. You don't have to be a professor. And James 1:5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. We can all become experts at receiving God's wisdom from the Bible. And we're setting off on our journey, aren't we, into 2026. And it might not be a bad time to choose to make getting God's wisdom, making it a priority for how we're going to live our lives this year. I don't know how you feel about 2025. How did it go? It might have been great, but it might have been tough too. You might even be feeling a bit discouraged. Perhaps being a Christian is feeling just a bit too tough, and you wonder if you're really up for it. I don't know anyone who hasn't felt like that at some time. So alongside a map, you need a compass. You need to start by setting your bearings. I find I regularly have to go back to basics. God loves me and you unconditionally. He's for us. And if we're not feeling it, I have to take time to get before God, to pray, and to let him bring me back to that place where I'm motivated by the joy of knowing him, where I'm just plain happy that my sins have been forgiven, where I've got a spring in my step because God's got good plans and I'm going after them. I love the story of how Jesus restored Peter after he'd denied him 3 times. He didn't corner Peter in a dark alley and say, "Do you realize how much you've let me down? You're a disgrace. I'm really disappointed in you. How could you do that?" No. Instead, we find Jesus on a Mediterranean beach, cooking a breakfast of fresh grilled fish as the sun's coming up. I mean, you could stop there, you've got me. And inviting Peter to join him in that place. No shaming. Peter knows what he's done. His actions have declared out loud, "I don't love Jesus." And Jesus is going to give Peter the opportunity to reverse that. "Do you love me, Peter?" 3 times. But it does the deep work in Peter, and he's fully restored. Effectively, he hears Jesus say, "I'm choosing you for my team. You're valuable to me. I've got a job for you to do." On New Year's Eve, I took a long walk on the High Peak Trail. Cold, but beautiful. And I needed to give God space to get under my skin. I found myself getting angry and indignant over the last year. I'm not happy about all the darkness and madness in the world. But I felt God say to me, "Are you angry because you really care about all the people that are suffering and all the injustice? Are you angry because people ignore me? Or is it more that your own peace is disturbed? It's harder to take time out and pretend that everything is just fine." I was reminded of James 1:20, which says, "Man's anger does not achieve the righteous purposes of God." And in that place of blunt honesty, I felt God's grace for me. I felt his strength and encouragement. And I was enabled to resolve to be less worried about putting my feet up and instead to be getting on my knees to pray. Friends, the issues might be different, but I think we all need times like that of drawing close to God. So at the start of a new year, let's do what it takes to be hearing Jesus say to us, "I'm choosing you for my team. You're valuable to me. I've got a job for you to do."
Charles, thank you so much. We're going to respond in prayer together. Slightly different to normal.